it does help the bullying program.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Mazur, and I'm going to try to consolidate two questions, so I'll give you a minute and a half. Would you consider consolidation of school districts, and what are your ideas to generate revenue for the district?
We've talked about consolidation of school districts, and as long as we're in charge, I'd love to. But we have, there's been some discussion about consolidating school districts back and forth, again to try and take advantage of resources that may be in one district that are not in the other. That's a very difficult thing to do, the way the current lines are drawn. We've talked about people that want to join our school district and they want to annex themselves out of other school districts and come into ours. We would love to have them, but that takes votes on both sides, redrawing all the lines. I think it could help in some areas. I would not want to see it in areas where it could also hurt us. We want to be very, very careful of that. From a revenue generation standpoint, I think we've spoken about that before. We're helping to take over some of the management of the Oak Park busing. We're helping to duplicate our wonderful UHS program in other districts, and so we are actually earning some funds on that program to actually help fund that and fund other ideas in our own district. We are continuing to look for additional revenue, ways to bring additional revenue into our schools, and we would try to help other districts where we can. We've talked about that already as far as using our resources, our assets, and leveraging them. Payroll, accounting, all of those kinds of items are things that we do very well and can continue to do for others as well.
Thank you. Ms. Stone.
Okay, that was a big question, which I would hope that obviously the board and administration would put many, many hours into analyzing before anything would happen. But I think the first step in consolidating certain services with other districts is, the first way to go in terms of bringing in revenue. I had mentioned it before. I would love, in terms of other revenue ideas, bringing in or starting a performing arts high school program that would draw students from other districts in, so that their focus would be the performing arts, but obviously with an academic balance there. Other ideas for revenue generation, which this came from our meeting with Mr. Meyer, where I know that they are looking into expanding University High School, I think, into the middle school level. So there are opportunities like that to work with what we already have and what our strengths are, and to expand upon those. Even summer programs for fine arts. Keep the teachers working and do things like that in our schools. So I think there are probably a lot of innovative things that we could do if we all sit down and work together and communicate with our teachers and our community about what it is they want in a district.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick.
I'm not going to reiterate everything Chuck said about the consolidation of school districts. We're on the same page there, and I don't know if you mentioned that we would have to take the lower per pupil allowance when you do that. In terms of ideas of generating revenue, as Christy said, we are looking at maybe a feeder school into the UHS. We're also looking at maybe the consolidation of our adult ed programs that are held in 3 locations and reaping the benefits of efficiencies in terms of some of those costs. We are also, similar to the bus agreement at Oak Park, we're looking at maybe if we can provide other services to neighboring districts that are in trouble. Royal Oak, as you know, over here, there's no bus service at all in Royal Oak starting in the fall. So we are continuously looking at things that we can do to bring in other revenue.
Thank you. Ms.
For measure.
Yeah.
For measure, whatever. Okay, as far as this goes, I know that in the district that I work in, which is the Madison Heights Heights School District, that they would love to be a part of our school district, and they say so openly. And that kind of terrifies me because they, I love where I work, but they're kind of a hot mess right now. So I would not be comfortable with our district taking on that responsibility right now. I want to make sure that we can tend to everything that we have here and make sure that we're completely shored up before we take on a lot of problems that another district are having. And I feel like from meeting, Gary had us to a fabulous meeting where he sat us down and he talked about all the super progressive things that he has going on right now. And honestly, I feel super comfortable with being on board with what he's doing. He's talking about a feeder school for UHS, which Carol had mentioned, and I mean UHS, they just received a Magna Award for how wonderfully that program is doing. I think expanding that is a great idea, and it has brought in a lot of revenue. I love Christy's idea of the Ferndale Fame. I do think that we could tap into that in our district, and whereas other districts maybe are pulling our kids out of our district for certain reasons, we can pull theirs.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Stahl. Was recently discovered a student attending Ferndale illegally. What will you do to reduce the number of non-resident illegal students?
Okay, well, there seems to be two sides of every story, and you know, talking to the administration, it sounds like these are isolated incidents that they have under control. However, going out in the public and knocking on doors and talking to constituents, the perception is that our illegal enrollment is very high and that nothing is being done with it. There's, who knows exactly what the truth is or what have you. I have to believe that the school board decides the policy, and we have to train people to carry through with that. One of the things that I do come from in my background, I have a 6 Sigma black belt, which actually uses statistics to reduce error in processes. I won't go into it because I have about 5 seconds left. But I would offer that in terms of helping look at the process and see where we may have errors in the process where people might be slipping through, if you will.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick.
There are a number of different ways to be qualified as a resident, but our district does follow the law with enrollment. We have only had 5 prosecuted cases in the last 10 years for fraud. Now, whenever we get any kind of indication that there's someone here that shouldn't be, we do an investigation. If it's proven to be that way, we ask them to leave at the end, and we notify them that at the end of that semester, they no longer can return, and that's to the benefit of the child. So we don't just ignore the issue. We do take care of it, and we handle it.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr-Muller.
It is the job of the school board to create the policy, and then for the administration to make sure that there's a procedure in place. And I know that we do have a policy in place and a procedure, and we are following the law. And if this is all the case, and we really are following up, and we are being diligent in this area, then we need to do a better job getting the word out to the public, because the public has a very different idea, that there are a lot of people going to the schools that are illegally registered here. And if this is not the case, we need to make sure, because I think that is part of the reason why there has been people leaving the district.
Thank you. Mr. Mazur.
Again, the school board does not set the policy on what requires you to come into the school district. That is already preset by the state. There's a whole list of